Okay, got that test out of the way. Okay, so today I'm going to be doing a tier list for the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, doing some talking about that. Um, for some reason, Tier Maker, at least the one that I found, has a couple episodes that are missing, so I'll try to remember to make some sort of remark on those as they go by. Um, so the transition between the 10th Doctor era uh, and the 11th Doctor era is probably the smoothest that we've had as far as a handoff between creators, or even between two doctors within the same showrunner. The tone is relatively similar. At least it's compatible with the sort of high paced action. They I think that they came under a little bit of flack at the time for, and obviously it's proved not to really be true, but that the person that they picked to replace David Tennant was another very young actor who was skinny and tall with kind of floofy hair. So I think from a very surface level, I understand why people thought it was, this is just going to be more of the same. They didn't really give Matt Smith the, they didn't really give him the benefit of the doubt to begin with. But the first series, the fifth series of the new show, really kind of starts off with a bang, and anyone who was watching at the time had to immediately have their concerns dismissed. So this is the probably the best first episodes. Well, okay, let's get it started here. So the 11th hour is, I'm gonna put an S for now. It might slide down later, but 11th hour is probably the best debut of a Doctor for the new show. Like first episodes, it's so good. It's so clean in its conception. At least the first half of the episode is like absolutely unassailable classic. I think it makes some kind of missteps in the second half, and it gets bogged down a little bit, and there's some goofy moments. But it definitely, like the first half when it's young Amelia Pond and Matt Smith's the 11th Doctor, like getting to know each other, and all that interaction is such a great, it's timey wimey, it's got your Moffat hallmarks, but it's also just a great contrivance to explore the characterization of this Doctor, like in a way that I think the Christmas Invasion kind of failed to do, largely because he was asleep for half of the episode and then he just kind of wakes up fully formed. This is sort of the Doctor feeling out what this new body is going to be, and fish fingers and custard and that sort of stuff. And by giving us a character that, unlike Rose, where she's a fully formed adult when he meets her, I mean, she's young adult, but she's still an adult, who has her own experience and everything like that. We get this sort of very interesting clever use of time travel to impress upon this young future companion. Like she's known him her whole life, but he just met her. It's very interesting. We have everything gets set up in this that's going to play out throughout season 5. So I'll just say that he starts out like about as confident as you can get as an actor has ever been filling that role. Some of the dialogue isn't perfect, but the 11th hour is just absolutely one of the best episodes, like to watch, is just a joy to watch. Beast Below, I'm gonna say I think some people have been negative on this, but I think it was really important for them to establish an A. Beast Below is A for me. Like I think it was really important for them to establish that the Doctor isn't just your pal. That he judges us, and he's kind of like on this other moral plane. I don't like the idea that the Doctor is like this perfect moral being, but uh, yeah, as a morality play, as sort of this it's a really weird world building. I generally don't like that kind of, it's a train but it's in space and, spaceship Britain. I think the idea is kind of silly. But it gives, like, this episode is a really good it's a really good first outing between the Doctor and the companion, because they leave everything else behind. They leave Earth behind. Um, it isn't just, hey, we're going to see something wonderful. It's, we're going to see something wonderful, but there's, kind of currents of darkness underneath it, which I think that exemplifies a lot of what Doctor Who is in the new show and also in the old one. Victor the Daleks, straight poop. Oh, it's just trash. It's just bad. There's almost nothing redeeming about it. Um, yeah, Mark Gatiss breaks my heart sometimes because, again, like, sometimes he writes really good ones, and we'll get to some of those later. But yeah, this one's not the best. Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone, I'm gonna put right between A and B. Um, yeah, I guess I don't have a lot to say about them. I think that they're, other than their first appearance of the Angels, it's always been downhill. Like, Blink was a perfect bottle episode. Like, it didn't really have anything else to do with the series. When Moffat decided, like, oh well, I created these monsters, I'm running the show now, I guess he contributed the Weeping Angels to the show. I think now they've been overused and they've kind of lost a lot of their oomph. But this two-parter was a really interesting exploration of what happens there. Um, Vampire Venice, it's fine. It's top of C, bottom of B. It's gonna slide down a little bit. Amy's Choice is probably gonna be bottom of C. I might even put it in a D. I don't particularly like this one. It really, I think they were really trying to push this idea that, oh, there's like a love triangle between the Doctor and Amy and Rory, but, like, that's really not what those characters are. It's not. Uh, I think that's one of the failures of Moffat, is he tried to force this sort of weird love triangle thing, where it's like, that's just not what those characters are, and that isn't what they end up being. So it feels really contrived. Um, Hungry Earth and Cold Blood are fine. They're watchable. I'm gonna put them in C. I really I wish it was better. This is Chibnall. Yeah, Chibnall's kind of aims towards mediocrity. Um, I really like the new conception. That I like the new presentation of the Silurians. I like that they brought them back because they're one of my favorite. Hard to say villains, but they're one of my favorite alien races, I guess. So I'm glad they brought them back. I'm not glad we have, like, Madame Vastra. It's gonna come later, but it kind of recapitulates the ideas of the Silurians very well. That they are not just hostile alien invaders; that they are cohabitants of our planet. Um, I think the idea is really interesting. I think it's done fairly well, but it's still within the shell of kind of like, it kind of wants to have its cake and eat it too. Like, it wants to have all of the stakes in the story be from the threat from the Silurians, but also say, well, they're not just mindless, violent or something like that. Like, they're not someone to be necessarily feared. Kind of gets mixed signals there, which is, I guess, that's kind of Chibnall's thing. Vincent the Doctor, I thought it was overrated at the time. I'm gonna put it top of A. Top of A. That might be S. I think at the time when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is a mostly historical one, and it kind of has." I didn't really understand the deeper meanings of it, but now that I've seen a lot of the analyses of this episode and how the invisible monster is really his depression, and it's written by Ben Elton, right? I think. Um, it's a really well written. Yeah, it's kind of a love story, kind of paying homage to Vincent Van Gogh, and also it's one of the few like historical sort of episodes where I think that they nailed the casting. I don't even know what this guy's name is, but he's fantastic and completely believable, and he makes such an impression in a single episode. Um, okay, Lodger. So there's two with what the hell is this guy's name? I don't know. Um, I forget the actor's name, but late night guy. It's a bottom B. It's like it's watchable. The second one's bad. I'll get to that in a minute, but the Lodger itself is like it's kind of a fun idea. Like what happens? What would happen if the doctor was your roommate? I think this particular one starts to go in leans a little bit far in the zany category as far as Matt Smith's depiction of the Doctor. Like he has a range in the Doctor, but he's always very physical and kind of bouncing around. But this one is particularly silly and it feels more like the kid-friendly end of Doctor depictions, which is one of the things I don't like about Matt Smith's era. Is it real, especially for the first season, like the interior of the TARDIS, it's got a bunch of like springs and toys and all stuff, and it's like it looks like a toy box blew up or something like that. It felt like they were consciously turning the show back into a kids show, where it used to always be children's television, the classic Who, but it still dealt with mature themes. Like it was a kids show that didn't talk down to kids, which made it palatable for adults. In the new show, especially like the first Russell T David era, I have to say now, because he's coming back, they made a conscious effort to say, okay, well, this is going to be a young adult show now. This is going to be for teenagers and up. So it's going to deal with things that maybe a kid show wouldn't, like sexuality, like identity, stuff like that. And I think it does it very well. It starts to kind of dumb it down a little bit in the Moffat era, I felt. Let's see here. Pandorica Opens and Big Bang. Those are those are both solid B. I think when judged, I'm going to put this Lodger down here. What am I thinking? That's a C. Pandorica Opens and Big Bang. They tried to recapture the big epic finale of that of the Russell T Davies era, and they largely succeeded. But I feel like Moffat leaned on certain tropes a little bit too much, to the point of kind of all right. So season 11 is this marked shift, right? Or sorry, season 11, the season 5, the beginning of the 11th Doctor era. The shift as far as storytelling goes from being arc storytelling, where you have beginning of the season, it introduces some sort of story arc, and then that arc is sort of established, grows, develops, and finishes within that season. There may be a couple little strands that get developed in like the next season or something like that, but it's one whole. Whereas I feel the Moffat era is kind of mystery box. So when you think of mystery box, you think of Damon Lindelof, you think of Lost TV show where or X-Files where they present a bunch of mysteries, but they never really intend on answering the questions they pose. It's just there to kind of bait an audience. And it's really easy to think of a crazy premise and a crazy plot hook when you don't have to pay it off. And that is how I think of the Moffat era, and that's how I think of especially the 11th Doctor era, is setting things up that they know they're never going to pay off. And that's kind of, they set up, the fifth season, they almost pay it off. It almost sticks to landing. Pandorica Opens has to, of course, have the Daleks and have the Cybermen and the Santarans and blah, 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 all these things making a cameo. I think that's kind of lame. Their overall idea is really cool. I like the idea of uh, like Rory somehow being a centurion and living for thousands of years or whatever. But then, like, he just becomes human again through the magic of wishful thinking. Like, that's doesn't make any sense. Uh, so the whole thing was there's cracks in the universe. So who put those cracks there? Oh, it was the Doctor because the TARDIS exploded. Okay, why did the TARDIS explode? Why was River Song in the TARDIS? How did she get there? Why was she there? Why did she make that like? And then it really feels like Moffat is just saying like, "Oh, I'm so clever that don't worry about it. Like you'll never understand like the high level that I'm thinking at. So don't even try. So just go with it." And I don't feel safe going with his hand waving. Like he hand waves way too many questions way too quickly, and as a piece of fiction, I'm putting it B for these reasons because I think it's still very solid television. It's very entertaining, but the sciency part just gets kind of, oh, don't worry about it. Shut up, go away. Like I had this cool idea, it hooked you in, and now I'm gonna kind of brush it under the rug and hope that the explosions and the you know the fast dialogue and the great music is going to distract you from thinking about anything here. And I'm a person that can turn off my brain like that. So it became really frustrating. And these inconsistencies piled up over the 11th Doctor era, especially with 11th Doctor era. Christmas Carol, that was fine. I didn't hate it. It wasn't as bad as the rest of them. Impossible Astronaut, wow. Like, starting the second season really strong. Like, if you're going to make a mystery, make it something really memorable. And they did. It really felt like the show got a shot in the arm. They filmed on location in like Utah. The cinematography looks really great. The kind of plot hook of these people getting their invitations is to come and meet the Doctor, very clever. It really works. um I think it works better than the follow-up, so I'm going to say this is I think it's probably up here, whereas Day of the Moon really introduces the silence a lot more, and it kind of deals with this. But then this is where it kind of starts to fall apart. Is that this episode was such a strong hook, like this idea that the Doctor is dead, and that was a Doctor from the future, and this is a Doctor from our time, and now we have to keep this secret from him because he can't know his like. There's a lot of really good ideas in there, and it's a really strong hook. And the silence are a really creepy, incredibly uh they're an incredibly clever and interesting enemy. Much in the same way that I think the Weeping Angel were. But they're also kind of fitness to purpose. Like they work really well in this story, much like the Angels did in like Blink. Whereas there's a reason we haven't really seen the silence come back is because they're kind of a one trick pony. Like they do a certain thing and fit into a certain kind of story, but that's about it. Day of the Moon's B. It sets it up better than it pays it off. Curse of the Black Spot, it's not terrible. I'll put it maybe above Christmas Carol. Definitely better than Lodger, but not by much. But it's very forgettable. It doesn't really tie in with anything. Doctor's Wife, I know this has become a fan favorite. Um, I really don't like it. I don't like it at all. The idea, like, the idea that the TARDIS is sentient, I don't like. The idea that it's also his like a companion and is somehow feminine and somehow sexually attracted to the Doctor is all very dumb. Like it really reeks of like fan fiction. Um, yeah, exactly. So this is Neil Gaiman. Yeah, it's name slipped my mind. Neil Gaiman, yeah, wrote Doctor's Wife, and it really feels like fan fiction. I'm gonna do something real controversial. I'm gonna put this in D. Better than Victory of the Dialects, but it's gonna be top of D because like as fan fiction, it's okay if you can throw away everything at the end of the episode. But I want arc storytelling. I'm kind of set up for that now. I want the things that are introduced in one episode to still be true later on. And it's like, okay, if we know the TARDIS is a living sentient creature, then we have to change the way we feel about things in the show. I don't like. Okay, Rebel Flash, Almost People. Top of B. It's real good. I like the premise. It's very cool. It almost feels like hard sci-fi sort of exploration of identity and like do we really know who we are? That kind of stuff. Very Philip K. Dick sort of level. Super good, and the way that they tie it into the next part, I think, is very clever. Where it turns out Amy has been pregnant the whole time, but she's was actually flesh. She was actually like a doppelganger. Goodman Goes to War. This is okay. Here's where we're gonna really start to diverge. So Goodman Goes to War. Really good episode by itself. When you look at it, it's like, okay, well, you're introducing all these characters. They all somehow know the Doctor, and they have, this is the first introduction to like the Paternoster gang. You got Strax and Jenny and Lady of Astra, a couple other characters, the Headless Monks. There's all the stuff that's supposed to be like, okay, we're getting like a lore dump in this episode. I'm gonna give it an A on the idea that if they had followed it up well, this could have been the most like this could be really epic. But they had like a mid-season break, and they came back with Let's Kill Hitler, which is one of my absolute least favorite episodes. It's bad. It's silly and it's campy, and we had this build up in Good Man Goes to War. We're like, okay, we feel like it's a serious episode, and there's epic things happening, and it's like, and it gets to this crescendo, and it's like, okay, next time on Doctor Who, and then it comes back next time on Doctor Who, and it's like, oh, it's just silly and goofy, and let's do a funny thing, and it's not serious and whatever. And why? Why'd you have to do this? It's because this is the moment where they ran out of ideas. This is the moment where Moffat was like, ran out of steam. He had a season and a half under his belt of pretty solid stories. Um, and then it was just like he just gave up. And from here on it, in the 11th Doctor's era is kind of running on fumes. Night Terrors, I don't like. I don't think it's very good. The Girl Who Waited is very good. I'm gonna put that in A. Yeah, probably around there. Better than Beast Below? Yeah, I think it's better than Beast Below. It's one of the last really good episodes we're gonna see with Amy and Rory. Let's see here. Closing Time, not good. I mean, it's not completely unwatchable, but like the characters from the Lodger from the previous season, they really overstayed their welcome. Like it was okay for a one parter or one time like bottle episode, but they just don't have. I don't know. It's just dumb. It's not interesting. Wedding River Song is really weird. I'm gonna put it in C somewhere because much in the way that the time is sort of breaking down in this episode, at the end of time, when it's always going to be this certain time and whatever. I really feel like the show kind of just ran out of ideas, and it's just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, and it feels like a kitchen sink sort of episode. So I'm going to put this probably at the top of C. It does sort of conclude an arc, and it doesn't do it completely ineptly, but it has to mire through a bunch of just silliness to get there. Doctor the Widow in the Wardrobe is bad. It's not really interesting to me. Asylum of the Daleks is bad. Um, man. So season 7, coming into season 7, there's a 7A and a 7B, and 7A, they really tried to make every episode feel like a movie. So every episode had there was a little bit they ran a little longer. They weren't always exactly, like an hour or 45 minutes or whatever. Some ran a little long. They had a more cinematic quality. They each had like promo posters coming out beforehand. They were really trying to push this idea that Doctor Who was like a cinematic sort of thing. Asylum of the Daleks, they come out and there's apparently Amy and Rory are broken up and getting divorced, and that's not really explained. It's like just everything in this episode is kind of a clusterfuck. It gets better and then it gets worse. Season 7 does. Um, as far as Matt Smith in this episode, he's kind of tertiary to the episode itself. Like he's barely in it as the Doctor. It feels more like an Amy and Rory melodrama, but it's a really contrived melodrama where it's not very good. Um, yeah, it's not unwatchable, but it's bottom of C. Power of Three, that's a Chibnall one, and it's probably one of the best Chibnall ones, even though it's not good. Like it's up with this top of C. Bottom B, the idea of just the Doctor sticking around for a while is great, and that exploration is really refreshing. We get to meet Rory's dad, who is some of you may know from Harry Potter movies, but I know him as Peterson from Red Dwarf. But he's a great character, and he's really lovable, and I wish we could have seen more with him. We see a little bit in the next episode, but Power 3, the villain is really lackluster. Like this does introduce Gemma Redgrave as Kate Stewart, but I don't think that is a very interesting character, at least not on the show. Just personally, I think every time she's on the show, like they can't stop mentioning that she's the Brigadier's daughter. Like that's the only thing they give her. They don't give her a life. We don't know, is she married? Does she have kids? Does she have a love interest? Does she have hobbies? Does she do anything? We just know that she's the head of unit, and unit is now just kind of a I mean, I know it was always kind of a paramilitary outfit, but didn't feel like real. It felt like in a cartoon world, what that like a GI Joe or something like that, rather than just like they're in SWAT uniforms and they have sniper rifles and stuff like that. And they're just faceless goons, other than her and a couple other characters. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. Power 3 it's okay. It is Chibnall mediocrity at its most mediocre. Dinosaurs on a spaceship. Sorry, but I fucking love it. I fucking love it. It's goofy, but it's like joyful. It kind of ties in with the Silurians a little bit. It it does have Mitchell and Webb playing robots, so that's already a bump up right there. It's got like Cleopatra, that was just she does a really good job. Um, it's got Peterson from Red Dwarf, like Rory's dad. It's the only adventure he ever really goes on, so it's really fun. Um, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know. It's probably the only one it's like that I like. Town Called Mercy is, despite the inclusion of Ben Browder, it's just not terribly good. I think that they got so much recognition and praise for their use of the American West as kind of a set piece in the previous season, that they just had to go back. That's kind of what it feels like. They try to make I mean, it's a space western. It's okay. It's real mediocre, but it's okay. Dallas Take Manhattan, I think is awesome. Um, I think that there are a lot like plot and characterization problems with it. There's like little niggling things, but as a farewell to really beloved characters, and I really like Rory and Amy. I really think that they're some of the most memorable companions. I think I think that's kind of like the optimal amount of companions in the TARDIS is two, because you can't just have one character. You have to have someone for them to play off of, because the Doctor's alien. You need a human and another human or something, whatever, to interact when the Doctor isn't there. Um, and have these two are their chemistry is really great. I know I've just kind of been going through kind of mechanically and going through each episode and saying what I like, but I was really sad to see them go because I really like them as a character. I like Karen Gillan. I think Arthur Darvill. I think they're really good actors. Um, I think that their chemistry is really strong, especially with Matt Smith. All three of them really gel in a way that it's hard enough to get kind of screen chemistry between an actor and a companion between any two people. But as a group, I think it's really kind of magic when that is able to happen, and that rarely happens even in Doctor Who. That it for whatever I like or dislike about the episodes that they were in, their characterization was always very strong, as was as is Matt Smith's Doctor. Snowman is like the only one of the only. I won't say the very only, because there are some with future Doctors, but of the Christmas year-end special ones, it's one of the better ones. They reintroduce, or I get kind of reintroduce, Clara as like a different kind of character. In the past, they give a break for the Doctor where he's off on his own doing something, and he's hanging out with a Paternoster gang. I really would like to see that episode where they are introduced, because he's kind of there in Victorian London, just kind of being a hermit, and it makes a lot of sense. They don't often do that. I mean, they haven't really killed a lot of characters off. Sorry. They haven't really killed a lot of characters off in the show, and when they do, or kind of kill them off, where they, like Rose, where okay, she's in another dimension, and you can't go visit her anymore. They don't really give the Doctor time to mourn and give them even depict them as being as having sort of space. They immediately have to have the next adventure, has to smash them in the face. This is what happened with Tennant's Doctor. But I like that they wrote that into the character, where it's like he's sad because his two best friends are trapped somewhere else in time, and he has to kind of live with being on his own, and his character changes, and he's not the happy-go-lucky character that he was before. He's a little bit darker and he's brooding, and it's good to see Matt Smith kind of exercising his chops a little bit, and having a little more gravitas, and doing something a little bit different than he's been doing for the last couple of years. Um, in this episode, Clara works. I don't think she worked terribly well going forward. I don't that I never really bought into that mystery box. Like, they present a new mystery box, which is now, oh, who is Clara? She's died a couple of times now, and she's this across history, and I don't know. I just don't think it works really well. I think it's the first time it's the first time they have in the new show where it's like it's not just a modern day human. now she's something special and she comes from the stars or whatever. Anyway, so then when they reintroduce her in Bells of St. John and the doctor is like stalking her, um, that episode is not good. Um, the fact that she's pretty much she needs a little bit of cajoling, but then she's basically like, oh, okay. She's not surprised by things. She's not doesn't think of things as alien. She's not put it back. She's like she's it's like she's just really she doesn't feel like a real character. She feels like a cardboard cutout. She feels like and none of this is on Jenna Coleman, who's a fine actress, by the way. None of this is on her. It's the writing. It's like they don't okay, unlike the Ponds in 11th Hour, where they give like a reason why they are so connected with the Doctor, right? Now they kind of like, well, we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to say this character is connected to the Doctor, but you don't know how, and you don't see it, and it happens off screen somewhere, and you got to take it as read that they're BFFs, and they have all this stuff happened off screen sometime in the future or in the past or whatever. Don't worry about it. They gel, and it's just like it feels like tell rather than show. Um, Rings Akaten is the blow your fucking mind episode for Clara, and it's just kind of goofy. It looks beautiful. It's a beautiful episode. Um, I just don't really dig it. Um, let's see here, Cold War. Man, I wish Cold War was good. I really wish Cold War was good because like bringing back the Ice Warriors, bringing back Martians, like that would be really cool. Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle C. Um, Hyde. Hyde, I really like. This is one of those ones where I think my sentiment is very different from the rest of the community, where a lot of people have just kind of put this in as like very forgettable. Um, it's somewhere in the bottom of A. I think it's middle of A. I like it a lot. I like the double meaning of hide, which is there's something that's hidden, but also like it has like a thick skin. Like the characters have developed this thick skin where they don't want to be affected and they have to kind of let their guard down. Um, so there's that and I like the weird monster. I think it works really well. I like the use of kind of the timey-wimey bits. I think it functions better than in a lot of the Doctor Who. It's well used. Um, they mention Metabilis crystals, so they got to use the Metabilis crystals, which is the Third Doctor thing. So like any kind of reference to Third Doctor era stuff is gonna kind of get me a little bit. That's just like a +1 point, but I genuinely think it's a good episode. Um, see, Crimson Horror. This is Mark Gatiss, and it is a absolute. I love it. Like I genuinely love this episode. It's one of my favorites, and people would fucking hate it, but it feels disconnected from the rest of the show. But it has the Paternoster gang, so there's that. I like those guys a lot. I really wish they would do more with those guys. I hope they get brought back with Davis. Um, it is really over the top. Like it feels almost like pastiche or something like that because like I don't know. It's got so much. Oh, what is her name? That oh, let's see here. Sorry, I'm checking on my phone here. Right, Diana Rigg. It has Diana Rigg and her daughter are like playing mother and daughter in this episode, and Diana Rigg's fucking awesome. Um, it's got so much good stuff, and it really just kind of has fun, and it is really campy. And I don't know, in the same way that Dinosaur is a spaceship, it just tickles me a certain way. Um, let's see here, next one. Nightmare in Silver is uh the beginning part of it, I'll put it in the middle. In the beginning part of it, it's pretty good. Like I like the introduction of the reintroduction of Cybermen. Like this is a new reintroduction. It is far in the future. It's not after thousands of years of cyber war or whatever, and trillions of people have been killed, and there's a hole in the sky from basically having to use space nukes or whatever. Um, but the way that it ends with the Doctor playing chess with himself, and it's just that's the worst part of 11th Doctor is him being over the top that way, and I really don't like it. Let's see here. Name of the Doctor is, it just feels like Indian giving, like we're finally gonna tell you, we're finally gonna answer these questions that you've been asking for years, and they're just like, nope, fuck you. Um, Hated it. I'm gonna put this there. I really didn't like Name of the Doctor. There are elements of very bottom of C maybe. Is it worse than Asylum of the Daleks? All right, I'm talking myself into a little bit higher here. Okay, it's better than The Lodger. Better than Christmas Carol. Mm, I think that's about right. Okay. It starts out pretty strong. It has River Song in it. It has this whole 7B is all about trying to establish Clara as being, the Doctor's BFF, and we don't really know what she is as a character outside of it. We know that she's some sort of childcare professional, like a nanny or something. What goes going on in her life is never really established because it's like, oh well, I used to live in this house, and then a different family moved in, and I stayed. Like that doesn't happen. What the fuck? And oh no, I just mind these children. Like, but they're like teenagers. They can just be latchkey kids. Like you don't need to fucking be there. What is this all about? And they're of course completely abandoned in the next season. They like suddenly. Oh, we don't know what happens, but she goes from being, I don't know, like a 19, 20-year old, uh, we think she's some sort of student or something like that, to being a high school teacher from one episode to the next. That's gonna get into Capaldi stuff. I'll get into that eventually. Um, oh, where was I? Yeah, Name of the Doctor. Yeah, they don't give the name of the Doctor at all. They kind of indie give on that, and then they have Clara jump into the Doctor's time stream, whatever the fuck that means, and suddenly she sees all the different iterations of the Doctor. Why? Except for, of course, now those aren't all the Doctors, and thanks to Chibnall, there are now tens of millions of Doctors, and they've lived for trillions of years and whatever. Fuck you, Chibnall. Um, None of it makes a lot of sense. Um, and then at the very end, they're just like, "Oh, there's an extra secret Doctor that you have been repressing and never told anything about." And that's, I hate this idea. I hate the idea of the War Doctor. I don't hate the idea of the. I like the idea of the Time War when that was introduced with Eccleston in RTD's first reign. I like the idea of the Time War a lot. I don't want to see any of it. I want it to be this mysterious thing that you can pull ideas from occasionally, like this. That's the mystery box that should never be solved, which is why, of course, Moffat had to go and fucking solve it. Asshole. Day of the Doctor. It's a bottom. It's better than Rings of Octatan, surely. I'm talking myself up again. There we go. All right. Day of the Doctor as a piece of entertainment is fine. As a 50th anniversary, it fails. As part of an establishment or embellishment or extension of the lore of Doctor Who, it fails. And it really feels like small stakes for such a big episode. So, okay. I've got lots of feelings about Day of the Doctor. Um, I had forgiven a lot of this show while it was airing because it's going to lead up to all it's going to. The reason he's leaving all these threads unfinished. That's mixing metaphors there, but leaving all these threads dangling is because they're going to get wrapped up in the 50th. It's going to be epic. And then he's basically like, no, fuck you, we're going over here instead. Okay, so before Day of the Doctor, they had, I think it's Night of the Doctor, which they brought Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, back for like a 3 or 5 minute thing, and he was great. And Paul McGann is awesome. I'll have to do an episode. I'll have to do a thing about him, but I haven't really seen enough of the, or I haven't really read or listened to enough of the spin-off media. But I've seen him as an actor in other things, and he's great. The little of the spin-off media that I have seen, he has been phenomenal in. And when he came back, I was like, yes, he deserves a chance on the screen. He deserves a chance to reprise this role. It would have been perfect for him to be the War Doctor, because they don't call it the Time War, they call it the War in Heaven or something like that. But it's essentially what the Time War is, inspired by when we're talking about the revival show. It's this, epic sprawling conflict between across all space and time between the Time Lords and some enemy. Like, they say it's, or Russell D. Davies says it's the Daleks. It could be some other race or something like that. It doesn't matter a whole lot. But he fought in that, and he takes part in that, and he's tangentially involved in that sort of stuff in the spin-off media. So to say, like, oh, well, he voluntarily snuffs his own life out so that he can become John Hurt is just, it's like there was a stunt casting meeting. They're like, oh, who can we get to play the Doctor that, like, would be a secret iteration of the Doctor? Of course they have to get like a big star, and John Hurt's, like, he's great. He is a fantastic actor, but he died a few years after this. He's never going to return again. It was, considering that the night of the Doctor, he name checks characters that he interacted with in the spin-off media, essentially canonizing those characters, to then say, okay, we're going to canonize all this part of the spin-off media, but then when it comes to the Time War, we're going to have like a new character, a new Doctor that like fits between 8 and 9. It was unnecessary. It was a perfect chance for them to bring back Paul McGann, who deserved the time to be there. It would have been a much better and more interesting special if they had done that. And so that's one of the reasons I don't like the Day of the Doctor. Obviously, they couldn't get Eccleston. He's got his own reasons for not wanting to come back. But they could have involved other actors. They could have involved Sylvester McCoy or something like that. There are other people that are around. They got Tom Baker to come back and be the curator. Like, he's the Doctor, but not really. It's just like wink and a nudge. The kind of solving of the Time War, like, they introduced the Doctor that fought in the Time War, who is like dark and brooding because he had to do the worst thing he possibly could do, which is lock away parts of time so that it doesn't spill over and kind of affect the rest of the universe, because like the war is just getting too crazy. Only thing you can think to do is to time lock it. Okay, that makes sense. But then the conclusion is, oh no, we can untime lock it and we can save Gallifrey after all. All we gotta do is, the old time traveler's trick, like, oh, we'll have to remember to do this in the future, and then we come back in time, blah blah blah. I hate it. I really don't like it. They should have left it there. I know. I don't really know what was gained by doing that, by making this giant canon change. And it's the first big canon change in the new show. Until the next one. But yeah, Day of the Doctor, it's entertaining. It's definitely more light side. It has fun characters. I like, for what it's worth, I like the interaction between Matt Smith and David Tennant. I like that David Tennant was able to come back. I'm glad to see him back again as the 14th Doctor. Anyway, that's how I feel. I could write an essay about Day of the Doctor, and I'm kind of running out of steam here. We got one left to go, which is Time of the Doctor, and I hate it. I fucking hate it so much. Like, Day of the Doctor, I'm annoyed by because they could have done something better, but Time of the Doctor doesn't work on any single level. It's just, oh, you know how you thought that all these threads were going to get tied up? Not only are they not going to tie up, but fuck you. It's Stephen Moffat. Like, okay, this is his doctor. Not only is this doctor gonna be, we're gonna kill him off somehow. Like, why does he need new regenerations? Oh, because you have decided that his previous regeneration was actually two regenerations. That David Tennant was two different iterations. Like, and somehow the War Doctor, like, okay, he's got 12, like, by the rules set up in Deadly Assassin, he's got, I think, 12 regenerations, so 13 lives. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. 12 regenerations, even if it's only 12 lives. He's 12, he's only number 11. Like, you don't need to reach out to the Time Lords yet, unless you want to unfavorably, uh, like, interpret the rules, which is like, oh, well, when David Tennant, regenerated his hand, that counts. Like, why? The War Doctor counts. You're the one who wrote him into being. Like, he didn't have to exist at all. You could have used Paul McGann. So the fact that he needed the Time Lords for anything was a contrivance. And they still don't really explain the cracks in the wall. Now the cracks in the wall they used to be remnants of the TARDIS exploding, and they still haven't explained why the TARDIS was exploding. It's just like, shut up and go away, stop asking. But now the people on the other side of the wall are the Time Lords. But the last time the Time Lords came into our reality from inside the time-locked Time War, it was a really bad thing, and the Doctor had to shoot him back in and use a gun or whatever. But now apparently it's all good, and the Time Lords give him 13 more regenerations, which now we know that he doesn't need because he's the timeless child. It's just like, just stop fucking with canon. Nothing about the episode works. Matt Smith came back. He was wearing a bad wig the entire time because I guess he was shaved his head for some acting role or something like that. There's a bunch of awkward sexual humor with him being in front of Clara's family, who, look, she has a family. Like, they never talked about him before. Like, where were they this whole last season? Like, suddenly she has a whole family. They're never seen again, by the way. They're only for this episode. After this episode, it's all whatever. And of course, it's a Christmas episode, so he has to be on a planet called Christmas. That's Christmas every day, and it's the most insipid, dumb shit. This is the most insulted that I have ever felt watching a Doctor Who episode up to this point. It has since been topped, I will say, but it makes me want to do bad things. Things that I probably be put on a watch list for saying. Okay, well, so the 11th Doctor, man, I rambled a lot on this one. The 11th Doctor, I like Matt Smith a lot. He's one of my favorites. We'll get to that. There's a lot of real solid episodes here. There's a lot of real fun stuff, and some of these you're not going to agree with. There's also a lot of shit. My goodness, there's a lot of shit. You can really skip anything C and D. Is just not necessary viewing to understand his time as the Doctor, his tenure. I really hope that he does come back for the 60th anniversary, for what it's worth. I think that he is one of the strongest. He's had a real kind of bumpy career since Doctor Who ended, or since his tenure on Doctor Who ended. Unlike David Tennant, who I think has just gone on to be like a superstar, and unlike some of the other actors that were already well established, he kind of came onto the scene, and this was the first thing that he was known for. And I feel much like he left after 3 years, as is tradition, to avoid being typecast, but I feel that that's left a void where he's, as an actor, he's hit a weird lull. But that's a different discussion. He definitely has a very unique and memorable depiction of the Doctor. In a lot of ways, it is a continuation of the energy and joy that we experienced in the RTD era. This is going to change in the Capaldi era, which is it's a real different. It's a departure, but it's still very colorful and vibrant and joyful and happy and bombastic. And even if a lot of the ideas don't land, I will give Moffat credit for having crazy ideas. That he throws stuff like up against the wall in a way that Russell T Davies, I feel, felt in his penned episodes of his era, he tended to be safer. Like his episodes weren't usually the best ones, whereas in this era, with a couple of notable exceptions, Moffat's his penned episodes are some of the best ones. I'm wondering if I can move anything else up into the S tier because I feel like it's underrepresented. There are a couple of ones that I really do like a lot. I'm just gonna go ahead and put Vincent and the Doctor up there. I think that's also an absolute banger of an episode. Um, but yeah, a lot of mediocrity. All right, well, thanks for watching. I'll be getting onto the Peter Capaldi one next week, getting to the 12th Doctor. But yeah, this is kind of how I feel about the 11th Doctor. There's a lot of good, and there's also a lot of bad. That's just how it goes with Doctor Who in general. But um, I really feel like between Good Man Goes to War and Let's Kill Hitler is when the show fell off a cliff, and it could never really regain the pace that it had during the first season and a half of the 11th Doctor's tenure. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think that has a lot to do with what Moffat was doing at the time when he was making other movies, and it just very stretched very thin. He got catapulted into stardom really because of Doctor Who, I think a lot, at least in the global market. He got a lot of writing work from having these. I think he won like 2 Nebula Awards or something like that, Saturn or Nebula Awards for the 4 stories that he wrote in the first 4 seasons. And so he was just a very in-demand person when he got this job. And that's more about Moffat, less about 11th Doctor, but it does spill over. It is an interesting thing about Doctor Who fandom is that we do tend to be much more open about talking about the interaction between on screen and behind the scenes and how they affect one another. And this is one of those eras where I feel like it was really negatively affected by what was going on behind the scenes. All right, have a good one.